Hey everyone, welcome to a special crossover episode of Locked On Lakers and Locked On Kings. Two teams, both struggling, both facing each other in consecutive games. It's going to be interesting. We'll talk to Matt George of Locked On Kings next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers and Locked On Kings your first listen of every day. Probably Locked On Lakers first and then Locked On Kings next because, let's be honest, Lakers finish first ahead of the Kings far more often. Why should this be any different? Bam! Right off the top. Just
not if Anthony Davis and Domantas Sabonis are playing. It's literally just one time, but that's okay. That's okay. We don't have to point that out. That's
probably true as well. Good comeback.
Keep talking, Brian. Good stuff.
I don't know. Historically, I'm right, but Matt makes a salient point here. You can check out both shows, of course, on YouTube. Many thousands of people do every day. That actually, that boo this man applies really for everyone. We can boo him, and it's a very effective meme. Do want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. One of the things that I think is interesting about this, and one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, Matt, and set all this up, is not only are we in one of these weird new NBA scheduling quirky things where they're trying to cut down on travel, plus the NBA Cup, where now you have these back-to-back games against the same team far more often than you ever used to, but also two teams that are kind of in the same place, both a little bit disappointing, certainly to their home fans, higher expectations of where they might be. A feeling of being stuck in the mud. Am I characterizing that incorrectly with what's going on in Sacramento? That just there's this sort of general sense of disappointment where the Kings are.
Well, there's absolutely disappointment in Sacramento with what the Sacramento Kings are doing and where they find themselves at. But I mean, you brought up the schedule, and I'm not a big fan of back-to-back games against the same teams, but I understand it from the concept of, okay, you have a Western Conference team, let's say it's the Oklahoma City Thunder coming to town, knock them out. If they're playing twice, knock them out both games in a row in Sacramento, or have Sacramento go to Texas and play 2 in a row against the Dallas Mavericks or whatever. That makes perfect sense. The Kings actually later this year go to New Orleans and play back-to-back games against the New Orleans Pelicans. Makes perfect sense. It's the other side of the country. For an hour and a half flight, if that, to do back-to-back games against the Los Angeles Lakers and to have them be on, I'm glad they're not on back-to-back nights, but to have the game on Saturday be a 3:00 tip-off for no reason. And this is so I understand the schedule makers trying to limit travel and things like that. And the Kings and Lakers being on the West Coast means they're always going to be towards the top of the league in travel, just naturally geographically. But the Kings also had a road trip earlier this season, guys, where they played a game in Atlanta and then they flew up to Canada for a game and then flew to Miami for a game. And this was all in the span of 4 nights. So congratulations that you saved a little bit of time with the Lakers being up here 2 games in a row. But the Kings, you still have to bounce around the East Coast like a pinball.
Looking over the Kings, one of the things I wanted to ask is I've been digging through some of the numbers, and it jumped out at me how Sacramento is top 15 in both offensive and defensive rating, just outside the top 10 in total net rating. They have a positive point differential, yet they are below 500. And they've never been more than 2 games above 500 and never for very long. That sounds impossible. What the F, man? How?
Well, it all comes down to, unfortunately, something that's supposed to be a major strength of the Kings.
I think I know where you're going, and this was on my list, but continue.
So the Kings they add DeMar DeRozan. They already have De'Aaron Fox, who's the first ever Clutch Player of the Year award winner. The clutch time is supposed to be the Kings' time. Like we were talking about coming into the season. If the Kings can keep every game close, when they get to the final 5 minutes, that's where they can really shine. The Kings have played 12 games this season, guys, that have been decided by 5 or fewer points. Kings are 3-9 in those 12 games. So an area that's supposed to be a strength down the stretch, close games, the Sacramento Kings are not winning these games. And it doesn't make sense why. They're fumbling them away just like they did against the Denver Nuggets the other night. A game which, by the way, they were down by 22 points, came battling all the way back to lead by 8 with 3 minutes remaining, only to completely fall apart and lose that game at on the final possession. It's frustrating because while this team is trying to figure out how to incorporate everybody and battling with all the injuries they've dealt with this season, they have shot themselves in the foot and fumbled away opportunities so many times, especially at home, to where if I'm the Lakers, I'm feeling more confident playing the Kings in the Golden One Center than I am playing inside the Staples Center or Crypto.com or whatever the hell you call it now. Because
I try not to call it anything. That's my solution.
the old building in LA, not the Intuit Dome. The Kings just
I call it the Forum. I keep it real.
the Kings just don't play well at home for some reason, and they fumbled away far too many games at home that they blatantly should have won.
But what's interesting, though, to me is that, like, that says the team should be better. Like, if you're looking at where the Western Conference shakes out, I mean, for as struggle buggy as the Kings have been, they are still, right there, essentially a 500 team. 12th in the Western Conference and 1 3-game win streak from probably being like 8th. It is a really deep group, and if you were looking statistically, I mean, one of the things that I think worries Lakers fans is the Lakers are kind of the opposite of that. Like, all of their advanced numbers tell you the team should be worse than it actually is. So when you're looking forward to where you think the Kings realistically ought to land in the Western Conference, do you think they are better than this, or is this what they are?
Oh, I mean, they absolutely have to be better than this. It makes no sense not to. This is one of the most talented groups that they've had since the early 2000s. But it doesn't matter on paper how good you're supposed to be or how good the numbers say that you are or are projected to be. Ultimately, you have to win basketball games. And you could compile a list of excuses in Sacramento for why the Kings have lost these games or what's been going wrong. But the reality is none of it matters and nobody cares, because you knew what the Western Conference was coming into this year. You knew it was going to be a 12-13 team battle. And you went out and added a player in DeMar DeRozan, who is, I think, a fantastic addition and brings more star power to Sacramento. And there have been games that the Kings have won directly because on stretches where they've gone cold, they could turn to DeMar and just say, go and get us a bucket or 2 or 3 or 10 just to keep us in the game and to wake us up a little bit. So I'm not saying the DeMar addition has been bad, but what the Sacramento Kings have done is essentially tried to brush a blatant issue of last season and really the last 2 seasons under the rug on the defensive end. And lo and behold, the problem didn't just go away. So the numbers are saying, yeah, the Kings should be better in certain areas. The numbers are also saying the Sacramento Kings cannot defend the 3, and now suddenly they can't shoot the 3. And it's perplexing. It doesn't make sense. But what the eye test is showing you is that this is a team that hasn't put everything together yet. And even though there's so much season to go, with the state of the West, you can fall behind and fall out of it really, really quickly if you take too long to get things going. And guys, the Kings are in what I believe to be the most important stretch of the season right now, because out of the, including the other night's game against Denver, 9 of 11 games were in Sacramento. Like this, you battled all the way back to 500. This is the time for you to strike. You're on your home floor. You can make up some ground here. But if you keep fumbling games at home, and you come out of this stretch still at 500 or maybe below 500, now you're looking at one of the hardest strength of schedules and long road trips for the remainder of the season. That might come back to bite the Kings.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, on top of everything that's been going wrong with Sacramento, according to all the different sites I've looked at, they are considered so far to have one of the easiest schedules to open. So they really need to get their proverbial bleep together fast, because it is about to get a lot harder.
For the Lakers, obviously, a little bit of controversy. It goes beyond, Andy, the scathing comments from Darvin Ham to Mark Spears on on Wednesday afternoon, which we, of course, covered in a bonus podcast. But after the break, some questions about what's going on with the Lakers from the Sacramento perspective. Matt will hit us up with some of those as we continue this doubleheader preview episode, or whatever we're calling it, for the crossover. That'll be next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Built. If you're a renter, it can feel at times like you're just stuck in this doom loop of rent payments and just watching your money vanish into thin air. And it's time to turn the rent game around and start earning serious rewards. And that's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. And every month you can pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use the points and jet off on a dream vacation. Put points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. Built points have consistently ranked the highest point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. That's why, again, Locked on Lakers and Locked on Kings is brought to you by Built. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use the URL so they know we sent you. That is important. Go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA to start earning your points on rent payments today.
Locked on Lakers also and Locked on Kings also brought to you by Game Time. I think people may have heard me talk about this, the everydayers. I love to take my kids to all the local soccer games that we have in LA. Lots of options here, whether it's Galaxy, LAFC. This year we started taking my daughter to Angel City games. And the way we do this is not necessarily by planning ahead. It's by checking out Game Time on game day, where I get the all-in pricing. I can know exactly how much I'm going to spend. I can watch the thing go up and down. I know if it's a good deal because I can compare it, and the tools on the app help me do it. I can see where I'm going to be sitting with the kids so they know where it's going to be, and they can get really excited about the view and all that good stuff. It is a really great way to do this. Let's say I'm in Sacramento and I want to, like, in over the summertime, and I want to visit an A's game at that stadium that holds like 19 people. How am I going to get there? I'm going to use Game Time to get myself some tickets for that. It's a great way to experience live events, not just sports. So you download the Game Time app, you create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, Matt. Anything you're curious about? I can't imagine what might be of interest to people outside of LA.
Well, first and foremost, the Sacramento Kings want to know what version of the Lakers they're going to be facing. So, and I also asked this question.
So do JJ
Redick. So we have ABC 10 has a bit of a problem here in Sacramento. ABC 10, the news station that I work for. For some reason, they've hired a couple of Laker fans that happen to work in this building, and they've been hounding me for weeks about, is LeBron James going to play? I'm buying tickets. I'm spending a lot of money to go and see the Kings and Lakers in the Golden One Center. Is LeBron James going to be playing? What version of Anthony Davis is going to be playing? I haven't been able to give them an answer, and I'm curious myself. I know LeBron's been kind of nursing his foot, and as of right now is listed as questionable for Thursday night's game. But guys, is LeBron going to be playing in Sacramento?
Were I to guess, he's going to end up playing. Again, it's purely a guess. I have not heard anything more definitive other than the questionable designation. I didn't see anything coming. Neither Brian and I were able to attend Wednesday's practice, but I didn't see anything coming out about that hinting that he might not play. AD's probable. And as far as the version of AD that Kings fans can expect to see, that's sort of a double-edged question. As far as his play this season, he's been consistently pretty good. But that matchup specifically,
pretty good to excellent. A couple of real clunkers in there, but we spent the first 10, 12 games of the season talking about Anthony Davis as a legitimate MVP candidate,
and he's coming off a monster game too against the Memphis Grizzlies. That being said, this matchup with Domantas Sabonis, it has been very traditionally Domantas Sabonis, just frankly outplaying him and getting AD out of sorts on a regular basis. That physicality that Sabonis plays with. Broadly speaking, you could expect to see a very good version of Anthony Davis, maybe even an elite version of Anthony Davis. Specifically, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I will throw in the nugget. As of now, the timing of us recording this podcast, we don't know if Domantas Sabonis is going to be playing. Domantas Sabonis actually hurt his back. He took a pretty hard fall when going up for a dunk, and he was fouled by Michael Porter Jr. against the Nuggets the other night. Stayed in the game, actually demanded not to be taken out of the game, and finished that game out. Domantas Sabonis tends to play and fight through injuries, so I would assume he would play, except for the fact that Sabonis missed a couple of games earlier this season with a back issue. So we don't know if he's re-aggravated it or not. So we're standing by, and maybe by the time people are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, we will know definitively if he's playing. Keegan Murray also did not play against the Denver Nuggets, and that is the complete depth that the Kings have at the wing position, which means who the hell is guarding LeBron James if he plays and Keegan's not playing? We have no idea. Kevin Huerter is also out. So the Kings have been dealing with and battling with their fair share of injuries. Trey Lyles is hopeful to return and come back for Sacramento. So I know both these teams have dealt with their fair share of injuries early on, but another question that I have for you guys, because there's a pessimistic viewpoint on this from the Sacramento perspective, is in what area do the Lakers most need to get right? Because Sacramento tends to be the ibuprofen or Robitussin for the league, in the sense that if this team is struggling, if the Lakers are struggling on something, they will come into the Golden One Center and magically figure it out against the Kings. So what is this team struggling with?
I love this question, Andy. I'm curious what you'll say too, because I think like the Lakers obviously need to get right defensively. Like they are bad. I mean, they've had moments. They've been better of late, in part because they are, I think, simply trying harder. They are putting out a little more effort. And the other day, LeBron comes back against Memphis, hasn't played in a little while, has significantly more energy, puts out more effort on that side of the ball, and the results, I think, help the Lakers with, certainly in the first half, especially arguably the best half on that side of the ball of the year. That said, they're not built to be very good defensively. And so you could say, like, do you need to when you say get right, do you focus on the stuff that you're probably not as good at? Or do you really think about doing the things that you ought to be good at better? Because I think for me, that's where the Lakers need to rediscover some of the stuff that they had early in the season, whether that's consistently making sure that Anthony Davis is the focal point of the offense, whether that's avoiding turnovers, whether that's moving with the ball, without the ball, getting guys like Dalton Connect to hit some outside shots. Like, they should be a better offensive team than they've been over the last 2 weeks. And to me, Andy, that's where I would say they need to get right, because I think their best source of steady defense is going to be an offense that consistently puts them in the best position to defend.
I would say if you're looking for indications that Sacramento is able to capitalize on the Lakers, it's how much is Sacramento looking to run? How much are they able to run, even though they have not this season necessarily been a running team? The Lakers are abysmal at defending in transition, and they are easy to score on off turnovers. And lately they've done a terrible job taking care of the ball. For most of the season, they actually have been very good at it, but teams run on them constantly after just misses, after even makes.
The Lakers did a really good job on Ja Morant on what day was that? Tuesday?
Sunday.
And they started Max Christie, who I believe will continue to start, going into these games.
I'd be stunned if he didn't.
And they put Max on Ja. And he did a nice job. I mean, Christie is of their sort of guard, smaller wings, their best defender by a mile. It's a low bar to clear. Part of the reason, though, I think that he was so effective against Memphis was that they don't pick and roll a lot. They almost never do it. Sacramento does. Definitionally, every team does more than Memphis, which means the Lakers will get back into something they've been very bad at, which is pick and roll defense. And I wonder if the ability of Christie to have a real impact on this game is going to be mitigated if the Lakers continue sort of their very heavy switchy defense, because it won't be hard for the Kings to screen away that matchup.
Yeah, they're doing everything short of asking, who would you like to have defend you?
We can relate to a switch-heavy defense in Sacramento to where when the Kings played the Spurs in Sacramento not too long ago, the Spurs were making a push down the stretch, and the Kings had either De'Aaron Fox or Malik Monk guarding Victor Wembanyama on the post, I think 4 or 5 straight possessions because they switched every time and refused to not.
Oh, we've done that.
So can relate. Can relate in that sense. I will say, like, the Kings have been at their best as a pick and roll offense, like especially with a Malik Monk led pick and roll. That's what we're seeing a lot now that the Kings took a page out of the Lakers playbook and finally decided to start Malik Monk. And lo and behold, he's playing better. Who knew? Malik Monk is actually good as a starter. It's almost like we should have been doing it for 2 years.
The NBA's 5th man of the year.
Well, he can't win the damn award, so might as well start him anyway. Nas Reed started and won the award, so maybe Malik will win it now that he's a starter. But I'm not bitter about that or anything.
You say bitter party of one?
Regardless, the Kings are going to definitely try and run a lot of pick and roll, a lot of DHO, especially if Domantas Sabonis is playing. That's a big body for anybody, Max Christie, anybody to try and battle around. So the Kings will try to do that. I will say, too, the Kings, while they haven't played fast, inherently they want to, and they have expressed to us verbally how much they want to play fast. And what the Kings have been doing actually really well over the last maybe month or so is turning their opponents over. So that might feed right into the way the Lakers are playing and not taking care of the basketball right now. That may feed into the Sacramento Kings, how they're playing and their emphasis on getting out in transition. I promise you this, the Kings will try to exploit what you talked about. Whether or not they actually execute it, especially on their home floor, that's another question. But what the Lakers can count on is, and it's usually to start the games and to start quarters, the Kings will have lulls. The Kings will have these 4 to 5 minute stretches where they're just not playing hard enough, and that's where the Lakers can turn the Lakers can turn a 10-point deficit into a 5-point lead, or they can build a 15-point lead in the matter of minutes because the Sacramento Kings will be kind of sleepwalking. It happens way too much in the Golden One Center, and I would expect to see it again.
So we'll see what this looks like over the course, certainly, of this weekend. Matt George, Locked on Kings. We always appreciate the time. Andy and I will be back in the next segment to react to all the stuff that we heard here. Thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Guys, this might be the closest thing to the playoffs both these teams get, so we might as well enjoy it like it's 2000.
The play-in, there's always the play-in.
Let's not do that. I would honestly rather the Kings miss the play-in than go through that again. Truth be told.
We need.
I think the Lakers are contractually obligated to be in the play-in. It's how it's seen the last few years. See you, Matt. All right, we'll react to all that coming up next.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you bet just $5, $5, and you get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So just find something that looks incredibly obvious, simple. Put down just $5. Boom. There's your $150 in bonus bets if you win. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, and they can even help you in the process. So let's say you're getting a hunch in the middle of the game, but you just want to confirm those instincts. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. And again, you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
I think, to me, Andy, and quick reminder, both of the postcast of Day of Pelé, which you'll hear after the game tonight, but also the Locked On Lakers newsletter, which is right there if you're watching. I always get this wrong because it's a reverse deal. Bottom corner there, you can sign up for the Locked On Lakers newsletter by going to lockedondaily.com, and you get the whole show just delivered to you every day, along with a lot of extra NBA analysis. It's a great way to support the show and support us. So we appreciate everybody signing up if you can. Tell all your friends. This question of what the contrast is going to look like in terms of shutting down a very explosive point guard. John Morant and De'Aaron Fox are not exactly the same player. Fox better shooter. There are some differences here. But that said, both of them are incredibly explosive, incredibly quick, and difficult to contain. And they are the engine that sort of drives, in a lot of ways drives the other team's offense. But with that screening, we'll see whether or not both Christie can be as effective and if what the Lakers showed against Memphis can be sustained. I wonder maybe if they'll try to figure out ways to screen a little bit or to switch a little bit less, maybe see if Max can fight through some stuff so that you can keep him on De'Aaron Fox a little bit more. I don't know.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. JJ's talked about looking to have more switching packages if we start seeing more distinctions depending on who is out there at any given time. If you happen to have a lineup with some of the better defenders for it, or some of the guys better at navigating screens, things like that. Again, Christie, for what it's worth, like our friend Cranges McBasketball, Tim_NBA, who's I believe been on this show with us. I know he's been on Lakers Talk with me, my weekly show for ESPN LA 710. He does over there. They do a lot of metrics, like really deep, unique breakdowns and stuff. And one of the things that they graded Christie as an A is screen navigation. So hopefully this is something that can work well, at least for Christie, if he has to deal with that sort of stuff. It'll be interesting too to see, like, even if they do some of that switching, how much of it actually involves AD. Or are they going to be keeping, like of late, AD more in a drop type coverage, regardless of what is going on with the other four guys? And, again, some of that I think could be greatly dependent on whether or not Sabonis actually plays in this game or not, because of all the different places you can put Sabonis on the court, whether they even have AD guarding him to begin with. There's a lot of different factors in this, but I also think, too, a lot of this is just going to be, do they maintain the defensive intensity and energy and, frankly, effort over the last 3 or 4 games that has been, I think, to put it generously, inconsistent in the opening 20 or so. Yeah.
And, an extension of that, I think, to some degree is, sort of the energy, not the effort, but the energy that Anthony Davis puts out. Because for all the talk of, Davis versus Jokic, and Jokic owns Davis, and all of these things, the Nuggets own the Lakers, but the Jokic Davis matchup itself has not been nearly as lopsided as
Side note with what you're talking about, I'm glad you brought this up. I was listening to, I want to say, the Athletics daily podcast with Dave DeFore, and they're talking about a rumor that the Nuggets are interested in Zach LaVine, and the guy that they mentioned that would potentially get moved in terms of, at least on the surface, looking to match salaries is Michael Porter Jr. And my immediate thought was like, oh my God, what a break for the Lakers. If Michael Porter Jr. gets moved to Chicago, that would, like, to your point, Brian, for all the talk about Jokic, Porter's the guy to me that absolutely just kills the Lakers.
Yeah, and from a matchup standpoint is a huge problem. Like,
oh my God, Rui becomes 100 times better in a potential Lakers Nuggets matchup. Just
I don't care if they trade Porter, I don't care who they acquire.
Yeah,
the Lakers are going to benefit.
Apparently, it would be Zach LaVine.
Well, but I saw a different one that wasn't LaVine. It was Porter Jr. for a different player, but it was
Ingram,
Chicago. I don't know who it was. I forgot, but it was in this case not Zach LaVine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
the Lakers will benefit. But go back to the Davis thing. He's held up. I'm not saying he's outplayed Nikola Jokic on a consistent basis. That's not true. And nobody does. He's the best player on the planet. But it's been a much more even matchup where AD has been consistently getting his ass kicked is against the Kings and Sabonis. And sometimes it's more of a team thing, but a lot of times it's the individual production between those guys too, where AD just doesn't hang. And that has to change. And so is it something that changes in this game Thursday? Does it stay changed on Saturday? Because as we've seen, the Lakers simply cannot absorb games where Davis isn't good. They can absorb he's some third team all NBA instead of first team. But when he puts up those 9-point efforts or just gets dominated, thoroughly outplayed, it's really hard for the Lakers to make that up, particularly if LeBron, questionable. I agree with you. I think he'll play, but particularly if he doesn't. They need Anthony Davis to be excellent in every game to have a real shot at winning against good teams.
Putting a bow on this, as far as the AD Sabonis piece of it all, I want to see AD go directly at Sabonis, because if Sabonis is dealing with a back injury, you need to immediately test it. You need to test his mobility. You need to test his willingness to take on that contact. Maybe this is one of those games where that physicality from Sabonis isn't cranked up.
His friends just call him Bonus.
He's Bonus.
Boney.
That's my boy Bonus over there. But this could be one of those games where he is not physically capable of dishing it out the way he typically does. AD needs to test that, and the rest of the team, frankly, needs to test that.
You tested Andy. Old school Lakers Kings with a steel chair.
Oh, I thought you were going to say old school Lakers Kings. You have Doug Christie's wife come out and start slapping folks with a purse, because that's the way they used to fight.
With a cowbell. It's just that was when this rivalry was rough and tumble and a lot more physical. The potential for movement in the Western Conference is startling. When you break it down, obviously no games anywhere in the league on Wednesday night, and a ton, full slate for Thursday. So stuff will move by the time Thursday's games are done. But there's not a huge difference in the loss column between the team in 12th, the Kings, and the team in 6th, the Suns. It's 3 games in the loss column, and that's 6 teams, 7 teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 teams separated by 3 games in the loss column. 2 or 3 games, as Matt was saying, 2 or 3 game win streak, 2 or 3 game losing streak, and your fortunes can change incredibly fast. There is a premium on playing good basketball every night, and that's just something the Lakers need to settle into, some kind of consistency where the wild swings between good win against Memphis and they lost by 41 points. They need a much more standardized level of performance if they're going to survive.
I mean, this is a continuation of something we've talked about with this basic LeBron AD core for the last several years. I think it was less prevalent during Frank Vogel's tenure, but it's something that's come up a lot, and especially over the last few years. They need to give a crap about the regular season, and they need to have an urgency about this part of it. I understand for guys who've been in the league longer, and in the case of someone like LeBron, season 22, you've been and done everything. This stuff still matters. It still matters, and it has to be treated with importance.
Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with our 26,000 subscribers. LockedOnDaily.com is where you subscribe to the Locked On Lakers newsletter. Honestly, it really does help us out if you sign up for that thing based on coming from our show. So do that. We appreciate it. Check out the postcast and then our show following Thursday night's game. We'll see everyone tomorrow.